Everybody,
welcome to, let's do the top hashtag. Welcome to
Somos Summer Fun Club.
Woohoo! We've, I don't even remember when the last one, if it was it a month ago already? This summer has just flown by, but we had a plan for all these fun clubs to do, and we are still working through them, even though summer is fast disappearing. So I am Martina Bex. I am the founder of the Comprehensible Classroom, and I am here today with the amazing...
I'm Elicia Cárdenas. I'm the director of training for the Comprehensible Classroom, and we have a really good excuse for these all coming a little later than we planned, and that's because we have been so busy with new and exciting projects and with getting ready for me to go push into districts and prepare for face-to-face trainings, Talbot County and Narragansett. I'm talking to you. I am so excited to see you guys next week and to go to California and Indiana in the future. So that's really where a lot of our energy has been going. I apologize.
Yeah, it's so crazy because, you know, that's for those of you that are new to Somos and new to the Comprehensible Classroom. Elicia has been working with the Comprehensible Classroom for quite a long time, but she didn't start full-time until last year. We hired her full-time as the director of training so that she could go out into the world and train districts. And then, of course, no traveling was happening last year. So this is going to be the first year that Elicia is doing the job that you were intending to do when you accepted the position. So,
but we have been super busy. And if you are new to Fun Club, one of the first things I want to share with you guys is this. This, if you are new to Somos, is going to be a super valuable resource. If you go to bit.ly/welcome to uppercase Somos, that's important. And I'll drop it in the link here in just a minute. I'll drop it in the comments. This is your Somos Launchpad. This is most commonly asked questions based on many years of being in this group and supporting teachers. And of course, you can always ask questions about implementing Somos here. Our fantastic curriculum mentors are here to help you. So that being said,
actually, that being said, I should mention, Elicia, maybe you guys have seen, if you've been watching us on the live and you've been interacting in the group and you know our mentors, we have a curriculum mentor position open right now. The application window is open until next Friday. So it's a commitment of, I believe, 12 hours a month, Elicia. So quite part-time. And there's information about that in the group. So if you have been teaching with Somos for a while and you are looking for how to better connect and support other teachers and feel like that might be a good fit for you, then look for the post with the job posting and follow the instructions. So that said, what is our topic for today, Elicia?
Our topic today is... first? Oh yeah, let's do the norms. Okay. To foster positive collaboration, we ask that you be kind to us and everybody else. Just as a general rule, we like that. Refrain from blame and shame. If this is new to you, that's great. If this is new to you and you feel bad about not having done it before, that's okay. Don't blame yourself. Don't feel ashamed. And more importantly, don't blame or shame other teachers. We are all on our journey. We're going to use that kindness with ourselves and with others as we learn more, because that's the best part about teaching, right? We're always learning. Be willing to try on some new ideas. We've got some ideas for you. I hope you'll try them on. These are all ideas that I have been putting into practice and coaching people on for the last few years, and I hope you find them useful. This one's important. Ask questions that are related to the topic of the session only. And the topic of this session is, what is it, Martina?
The topic of this session is selling your program to stakeholders, communicating with stakeholders, getting buy-in from the stakeholders, whatever those individuals are for your program, whether that be administrators, caretakers, school board members, and yes, even students.
And the last part is help each other find answers to the questions. Christina Baca, one of our existing and amazing curriculum mentors, already started when I mentioned the Welcome to Somos Launchpad. She put the link in. Thank you, Christina. I appreciate you so much. So everybody, touch your nose. Touch your shoulders. Give yourself a big hug. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, and I guess just to start, I want to see, I think that my computer's doing the thing where you have to keep refreshing for me to see anything. But drop in the comments, let us know. So like we said, the topic is communicating with stakeholders, getting buy-in. And so on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being none, no buy-in, and 5 being like amazing buy-in, let us know where your stakeholders are at with your program right now. Have you really had a hard time selling your program? Do you not have a lot of support and buy-in from your stakeholders? Or do you 5 have so much buy-in, they're on board, whatever you do, they will back you?
So I'm seeing some 5s, 2, 3, 4. So we're kind of all over the map. I'm hoping that with some of these ideas, you can move into those 4 or 5s. If you are already at a 5 or a 4, I hope that these ideas continue to support you.
And we hope that you'll share your ideas, share the secrets to your buy-in success with us and with other teachers as well.
Absolutely. So first, here are some stakeholders that I came up with: administrators, and that can be department heads, that can be principals, vice principals, curriculum directors, all of those people. Caregivers, the students' families and the people with whom the students share their lives. Those are the people that I consider caregivers. Colleagues, sometimes it helps to talk to our colleagues and to share our successes with our colleagues in an appropriate way. And of course, students. And I think that sometimes we forget that students also, they want to know why. And in fact, they ask, why are we doing this all the time, right? How many of you are, why are we doing this, right?
Yeah, well, and I think that's really interesting, to really remember that, because, okay, so what's a stakeholder? Someone who has a stake in what's happening in the class, and who has a greater stake in what's happening, but the students. Yet so many times, we're talking around them and about them to all of the other stakeholders and not involving them in that conversation. So I'm really looking forward to hearing.
We're not talking to them, which is so important. So why do you, if you're watching or listening right now, why do you think it's important to talk to stakeholders? Go ahead and drop that in the comments. I have ideas, but I'd like to know for you, why do you think we need to be talking to stakeholders? What are the questions you get asked about your classrooms? What are things that are pinch points or struggles for you?
Or perhaps why do stakeholders, what are reasons that stakeholders have heard in the past that they should have a say in what you're doing in the classroom? Well, considering it from their perspective.
To establish positive relationships, to ditch their old views or their differing views, replace their views about language learning and what language class looks like with a new vision, to validate your desire for better curriculum in purchasing or choices and understanding new methodology, to get support in what you're doing. All of these coincide with my reasons too, you guys. This is really important. One thing for me that became really apparent was that class looks different. When you walk into my classroom, it looks different, it feels different, it sounds different. The expectations are different. The expectations of parents are different. The expectations of kids are different.
And Elicia, when you say different, you're meaning different than?
Different than usually other language classes that they've had, and caregivers and administrators' expectations of what a language class should look like. And I think that's really important because there's this idea of what it should look like, but yet we also know that there's a really strong movement to not make school look like it did 100 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Which is a very powerful thing. If your school is jumping onto any kind of innovation bandwagon, talking about comprehension-based communicative language teaching, which is what SOMOS is grounded in, is a really good way to go with the flow of that school-wide innovation while grounding yourself in research. We talk about that all, was it last week? Our foundational beliefs?
Yeah, our last one.
So we'll
not last week, but the last episode, yeah.
So,
yeah, and Elicia, I'm going to interrupt you super fast and just say we have a really robust resource page that we'll share the link for that to you after this is over. And the foundational beliefs live from a couple of weeks ago, along with resources for that live, is linked on that. And I just remembered that as you were talking, I need to add Bryce Hedstrom's observation sheet to the resource.
Yes, you do.
So
I will remind you.
Okay.
So one of the things that most people think when they come into my class or into a comprehension-based class is that class looks unfamiliar and work looks unfamiliar. I'm asking students to listen to understand. I'm telling stories. We're telling stories. We are reading to understand, not to skim and pick out like basic meaning. We're like really trying to understand. We are playing in the language. And most importantly, we're talking a lot in the target language. If you're in my classroom in particular, you're also seeing a lot of laughter, dance, movement, stuffed animals flying through the air. Now, not everybody is like that, and you don't have to be. But for me, explaining why I made those choices became really important because it sure didn't feel like school. And
how many times do we see that comment in the group where a teacher is getting feedback from usually an administrator saying that this doesn't look rigorous, it doesn't look academic. And so our job becomes bridging that gap between their expectation of what meeting their expectation should look like and the reality of what it looks like to meet that expectation of rigor in the context of a proficiency-oriented language course.
Thank you for saying that. That is so true, because often it is administrators who are like, or parents, you guys are just playing all day. Yeah. Where are the
Where's the homework?
Where's the homework? Where's the memorization? Where's the memorized dialogues? Where are the projects?
My kid doesn't know verb endings.
So first of all, I want to remind you guys that we as teachers deserve to teach in a way that is effective and meaningful.
Say that again.
Teachers, us, we deserve to teach in a way that is effective and meaningful. And this is a quote from Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers, and it applies for all teachers in all subjects. For us in a proficiency-driven environment, it means that we want our students to have the best possible outcomes and feel good doing it. Okay, like that's how I see it. Stakeholders care about what goes on in their class. They care because they're getting paid to, our administrators. They care because they care about us and our success, also administrators, hopefully. Caregivers of our students care. They want to know what's going on. They really do. There is no caregiver who doesn't want the best for their students. It might look different in different situations, but that's pretty much a universal. Everybody wants the best for their kids or the kids that are in their care. Students deserve to understand why we ask them to do what we do. I don't think that we can any longer get away with do it because I tell you to, do it because I'm the teacher. I don't think that's a very good way to connect with kids. I don't think that's a very good way to honor their brilliance and their curiosity. I think that students deserve to understand. I think they have a right to. So go ahead, Martina.
I was going to say, and I'm thinking about with my own kids, and they'll ask me why, and I'll explain it to them, and sometimes they still don't get it. And that's okay. You know, language acquisition, like we are all still learning about it. You know, it's ongoing, the research into it. Students don't need to understand it at a very deep level. And if you're doing, you know, if you make an effort to explain it to them and it's just not quite there yet, letting them know that, you know, I'm here for you. We can keep working through this. We'll come back to this conversation. And for now, let's just give this a try. Like kids don't have to be totally 100% confident in their understanding, but you coming and meeting them and showing you're willing to help them understand is going to go a really long way.
Now, one thing before I move on is it's really important that you know why you are choosing to do it this way. And that's why we did the previously mentioned fun club on this. But it is really important that you understand why you are making the choices that you're making. So if you're unsure about that, that's okay. We are all on our journey.
Yeah.
Maybe you might want to firm that up and go back and watch that before moving on to these ideas. But if you are having back to school night in 2 weeks, I've got your back. Okay. So just know, knowing why you are choosing to teach in this way is sort of a prerequisite for being able to have a conversation about your program with stakeholders. So the way I've thought about this is there's 2 big ideas I want to share. The first one is use every opportunity to connect with caregivers in particular. I'm a huge fan of using back to school night for this. Now, I've had back to school nights in so many different kinds of iterations. So online and make a video, and you have 3 minutes to explain to this group of parents about what you're doing. And then you have to run to another classroom and you have 3 minutes. And if you were me, you always got stuck behind the fabulous person who talked for 7, even though they only had 3. I tell you, that happened to me 5 years in a row.
Oh my gosh, of course.
Even with 3 minutes, I had time for a really short demonstration lesson. I had time for a really short elevator speech, and I had time for a little visual demonstration. And I'm going to share that for you now in 3 minutes or less. Now, I know you're going to have to imagine that I have my stuffed animals. Can you all imagine my stuffed animal here?
I'm like, there should be a stuffed animal around here somewhere.
It needs to be a dragon or a unicorn. And the reason is that I will tell parents, okay, so I just want to give you a little taste of what our class is going to look like. So all you need to do is answer my questions. You can nod yes or give me yes. If I ask you yes or no, let's practice yes or no. This is 8th grade back to school night. And they say, and then I say, great, perfect, you've got it.
I nodded too hard. Oh.
Clase, esta es un dragón. And I hold up my dragon. Clase, esta es un dragón. Oh, it will help parents, families, caregivers, if you say, ooh, can you do that for me? Okay, let's try that. Esta es un dragón. Ooh, very nice. You don't have to, but it makes me feel better. Thank you. Okay, clase. Sí o no. Esta es un dragón. Excellent. Sí, esta es un dragón. Esta no es un unicornio. So, caregivers, did you understand what I just said? How did it feel?
So fun. So exciting. Amazing.
It feels good to know what people say, right? Like it really does. So in this class, my goal is to do what you have all done with your students. You have all been amazing language teachers by giving them what their brains need to be understood. You talked to them and made it understandable. You are amazing language teachers. I'm going to try to do as well as you. Now, for some of you guys, you may think that my class is missing things that you are used to seeing in a language class. So I would like you please stand up if you took more than 2 years of language class in high school. Fantastic. Okay, stay standing if in that language class you studied grammar, you conjugated verbs, you did drills, you filled in the blank, you learned about rules and patterns.
I'm still standing.
You are still standing. Now, stay standing if you are functional in that language today. Teachers, you're going to see them dropping like flies. And you look around and there'll be a couple, and then you might ask, did you happen to study abroad? For those of you who are still standing, did you study abroad? Almost everybody is going to then stay standing. And then you look around and there's one person standing who still speaks the language in a room of 30 or 40 people. And you say, and so that's why we do something different. Mm-hmm. It is an immensely effective way if you have people in front of you. You may not have people in front of you, and that's okay. You can use your learning management system, because you know what? We all have them now. Make a video explaining what class is like. We have a downloadable caregiver letter for you that you can download and put on that. Make a question and answer, host office hours. There are so many opportunities that you can use to connect with caregivers. Oh, wait, there's more. Parent-teacher conferences, caregiver conferences, whatever they're called in your context, are, for me, an opportunity to educate parents. I also send out another caregiver letter before those conferences. Martina has syllabus homework for free on Teachers Pay Teachers. We'll make sure that's in the resources. Although I think
it's actually even in the SOMOS 1 Unit 1 plans now. I think I put it right in there.
I think it is, because it's so powerful. And honestly, I still try to connect. If I haven't connected with a parent, my goal in the first 3 or 4 weeks of class is to connect with every caregiver. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's when I see them, maybe it's not. So our first rule is just connect. Mm-hmm. Know why you're doing it and be able to explain it. I think practicing your elevator speech is an incredibly powerful thing. Do you have an elevator speech, Martina?
Oh, I'm sure I could come up with one, but not on.
So mine is something like, you know how everybody, a lot of people study languages in school, but not a lot of people actually speak them. Well, it turns out that what we need in order to develop language in our heads is different than how we teach it in schools. So my goal in class is really to use our amazing brain's power to teach language the same way that parents teach their kids language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think anytime that you can connect it with their first language learning experience is money, because everybody that you're speaking to, that you're communicating with, has learned another language, and they did it effortlessly. They did it subconsciously, and they're communicating with you right then. So you know that they were successful in doing so. So why then was their second language learning experience different? And so, reiterating that the research shows that all languages, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, are acquired in the same way. Your first language isn't special in the way that it's acquired. That is how we acquire languages. And so it's just shifting so that we're teaching in a way that is in line with how language is actually acquired.
And what I've found when parents say, but I learned my language in school, you say, that is so awesome. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure everybody can.
I have, I know this is not where we're at, but I have a quote here and I'm going to.
Well, that is a wonderful segue, because my next bullet point, my next big idea is to use quotes.
Oh, here we go.
Martina's finding them.
I'm finding, it was just this one. It's very small on my screen. Yeah, so the assertion that many students all over the world have learned languages via a focus on forms ignores the possibility that they have really learned despite it, as well as the fact that countless others have failed. And, Elicia, like you said, well, what about everyone else? And there's all of these arguments for so many things, like wearing seatbelts. And it's like, well, I never wore a seatbelt when I was a kid and I'm fine. It's like, well, that's great. And also a lot of other people that were in car accidents not wearing their seatbelts. Like you are not the rule, you're the exception to the rule. And I remember having a conversation with my mom about spelling with this. I think I've shared the story before. And my mom's a really good speller. And she told me it was because she did spelling bee competitions and she worked really hard to memorize her spelling words. And I said, well, Mom, you're a pretty big reader, right? And she's like, yeah, oh, I read all the time when I was a kid. And I was like, well, according to the research would actually support the idea that you were a strong speller because of your reading, not because of your memorization. She's like, well, no, it's because I memorized. And I'm like, but there's no way to prove that. So, and what about all those other kids that studied spelling and they're not good spellers? Like, you're the exception, Mom.
That's hilarious.
Yes, but it's the same way with language acquisition. Like you're this assertion that like, oh no, but this is how everyone learned language. This is how so and so that I know, this person learned language. This is how you learn language in the classroom. It's like, no, I learned despite this, or in spite of. Yeah.
In spite of, I think.
Yeah.
I think that so all of those ways that we connect with caregivers are very caregiver focused, but it trickles down because students are actually in your classroom. So then to really address student needs, I use quotes. So I first learned this from Diane Neubauer, who's an immensely talented PhD candidate and Chinese teacher and trainer and coach. And she either projects a quote like this or shows a quote or puts a quote on the board and talks about it. She spends 10 minutes a week or less. Another way to think of it is as pop-up second language acquisition, which I'm attributing to Lauren Talkman, who has this amazing blog about metacognition. We'll make sure that it's linked. And when kids say, well, why are we doing this? Because this is how language is acquired. We listen, we understand, we read, we understand, eventually we write and speak because we understood. I kept quotes on my hallways. So when kids were waiting, because I had them line up, as passerbys, especially before conferences, they'd have to sit and look at my bulletin board and read it. And then on my walls, so in my classroom library, in various places, I had these quotes. I had them in English so that everybody could understand them and so that kids would go back to them. And I can tell you that after a couple years with me, students could talk about how language acquisition happens, and not always to the joy of their future high school teachers. I have to admit that sometimes an 8th grade or a 9th grader who feels really confident cannot be the most generous soul. You probably know that. But the fact that they understood that I knew why we were doing something was really important. Let's see.
And we have a whole set of quotes to share with you in the resources and the resources page that we're going to send out. We'll have them ready to project and also ready to print if you would like to use them to decorate your walls. Do you have a favorite quote, Elicia, that seemed to really resonate with your students? Oh
my goodness. I have so many.
I know, I've got some.
I think this, you read my mind. This one was outside my door. Because I was in a high academic environment. I had a lot of kids very convinced that they needed to practice by speaking when what I really needed them to do was monitor their understanding and then respond. It wasn't that we didn't speak. It's that we didn't practice speaking. We communicated for a purpose.
And this is one of those things that administrators are often looking for misguidedly in observations. Is well, I didn't see the kids speaking. I know, this is supposed to be a class where you learn how to speak the language. Wah, we do not acquire language by producing it only. And look at the title of the book that comes from. Principles and Practice of Second Language Acquisition. How smart is that?
And I noticed somebody it mentions like Dr. Bill Van Patten.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, he has some amazing quotes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we actually have any in the quote sheet.
I think I added one to it, but yeah, I think my top, well, communication is the interpretation, expression, and or negotiation of meaning in a given context for a purpose. So like the definition of communication and remembering, especially that interpretation. And I think there's one, he said that quote before where he goes on to say, and in the early stages, primarily the interpretation. So to keep coming back to that yes, communication is all of those things, and they are not all equally important for like one side of the communicating at the same time. Like in the beginning, one person expressing while the other interprets.
That's communication.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of the other quote that is one of my favorites, which is the one from Lori Clark, who is the co-creator of Embedded Reading and runs the Hearts for Teaching site and blog. Mm-hmm. She talks about how communication is,
I've got this one.
What is it? Putting an image in. Yeah. The purpose of communication is to put a picture in the heart and or mind of another person. Mm-hmm. So somebody is doing the putting, somebody is getting it. Mm-hmm. And I really like that. And if you are getting that picture, that is part of communication.
Yeah.
So what questions do you guys have? I've been trying to keep these shorter rather than longer because we always go too long. So I'm trying to keep it shorter. So what are your thoughts about this?
So while we're waiting, we have a little bit of a delay always. While we're waiting, Elicia, then just in summary, so it sounds to me like the way to get buy-in is to connect with stakeholders, connecting with caregivers, connecting with administrators. And then, one of our core beliefs is managing expectations over behaviors. And so understanding that your stakeholders will likely have certain expectations about your class and managing those expectations before they even are brought up to you, like being preemptive in your management of that.
So I see two questions. One of them is how much would I estimate, how much of the SLA, how much of second language acquisition should be taught to novice students? I don't need novice students to be able to quote Michael Long. I don't. I need them to understand that we acquire languages when we understand messages. Mm-hmm. That's my point. We acquire languages when we understand messages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's really important, Elicia, that you just said that for novices, especially because getting buy-in from students, not just understanding why you're doing it, but getting them to participate as they need to in class is really important. And the way that they need to participate in class is letting you know when they don't understand. And so helping them to understand why that is so important, why it matters that they understand what you're saying, that they understand what they're reading, and that that's okay, that it's not on them if they don't understand. Like, this is language acquisition. You're the one, the burden of being comprehensible lies on you. You just need their help, and it doesn't need to be all on them to let you know, but it helps when you have their help, their buy-in to letting you know when they don't understand. And for novices, that's really important. So helping them to understand that comprehension piece.
Mm-hmm. The next question on the resources, do we have a PowerPoint about how we talk to our kids about proficiency? That's a really interesting question because the answer is no. There is, I think, some value in helping families, caregivers, students, and administrators understand that after a year of language acquisition, novice mid, that is lists, repetitive, often not understandable, that a novice mid after a year 1 program is a reasonable expectation, but this is a little bit different. To me, that's talking about proficiency, that's talking about assessment, that's talking about standards and what standards do we set. So I see that as a little bit different. I can come back and drop a link into some information about how I teach about proficiency.
Yeah,
but
I would say, Elicia, that in terms of getting buy-in, that, like you said, managing their expectations. So you're not going to be fluent at the end of this year. So really just in that, helping them to understand what's realistic for them to expect after, or as they go through your course. But I don't think there's ever a need really to, and I'm not saying that this is what you were asking, Cecilia, but I don't think that there's a need to make sure that students are able to look at a piece of writing and identify which proficiency level it is. And I've seen, some teachers do that. I understand the thinking behind it, but I don't think that that's the best use of time in a language class. I don't think that students need to be able to like grade or self-assess on a rubric, just to be able to know, like, hey, I'm going to be slowly getting better in the language, and that's okay.
And in fact, I wrote a whole blog post where I explored that idea with some of my students, and we talked about why we would want to do that and their frustrations in it. And it turns out they were super confused because they were like, I don't know, I don't speak Spanish. I see some questions about pacing and the curriculum. And just a reminder, ask those questions in our bigger group. But we are definitely just talking about selling our program to stakeholders, but definitely put those questions in the group. So I put quotes on my walls in English. There's no way, first of all, the quotes are not in Spanish. And so I wouldn't feel comfortable translating them necessarily. And number two, the kids, it would just be noise for them. They wouldn't be able to understand it. And it would sort of defeat the purpose of allowing us to have a conversation about second language acquisition, which we would do in English. Let's see. So yeah, do you guys have other questions, other wonderings?
Well, we are going to make sure you can drop those in, but in the meantime, I'll just kind of work toward the wrap up. So we'll make sure that we send out the link to, or did you already drop it in there, the landing page with the resources?
I dropped it in, but I'm going to put it in again.
Okay. And we'll be sharing that. We'll be adding to it. You'll see that the quotes file is not totally, we don't have the printable versions in there yet, but we'll be adding them. So please use that. If you have had success, if you were one of the people from the beginning that said, I'm a 5, I've got total buy-in, let us know what you did to get there. And in the meantime, I think just communicating, looking for every opportunity to communicate, to be open, looking for opportunities to connect with caregivers, administrators, students, and continuing your own personal learning at a manageable rate. You don't have to go right now and get the equivalent of a master's degree in second language acquisition, because you have a full-time job that's teaching and probably a lot of other responsibilities in your life, and you just need to take care of yourself. So we're not suggesting that, but as it's manageable, identify areas that you don't feel confident and look to, let's see, Eric Herman used the word, or Diane Neubauer used the word interfaces like us, people that can help you find answers quickly to your questions and get you support so that you can keep moving forward.
Awesome. If you guys don't have any other questions, apparently I am really tired, so I apologize. If y'all don't have any other questions, thank you so much.
We will be here in the comments in the coming days for anything else, and we will see you next time.
Ciao.
Goodbye, everybody.